Welcome everybody to the man cave, which is, and I just want to kind of go over a few rules before we get all the way started. I want to remind everybody that this is a nonpartisan event, so we are not trying to sway anyone's opinion towards a party. We're just trying to provide information, and this came about because I needed this. There's so much information out there, and there's so much vitriol and mudslinging from both parties. And what I was actually looking for is just the information as to how it pertains to my life, my family, and then the community that I'm personally involved in. And I wanted to make decisions solely on that, and not because the media junket is pushing a narrative that I have to make my decisions based on. So that's what this event is about. So I'm just a dad, just like everybody else. And I decided to reach out to a couple of friends of mine who are very well versed in the political space. So on this particular webinar, we have former commissioner, former Las Vegas commissioner, Dr. Lawrence Weekly. And we also have president of the NAACP local Las Vegas chapter 1111, Quentin Savwoir. So welcome, fellas. Thank you for joining me and help me kind of patch some of this up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
Happy
having me.
to.
Yeah, happy to be here, and thank you to all of your guests that are chimed in, and of course, it's an honor to share the microphone with our president of the NAACP, President Sawa. I watched him on a panel. I was in the audience last night on the campus of UNLV and listened to him on a panel, and let me tell you, he doesn't disappoint. He comes through. He's a, to be a young man. As old folk will say, he's been here before. Uh-oh, I think the baby agreed with me.
Yep.
I love it. That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's an honor.
That's awesome. President?
Good evening, family. It's really a delight to be with you tonight. We got 6 days, 5 days. This Wednesday, 6 days left. What is time anymore in this very important election season? But I'm really delighted to be amongst this group of men tonight because outside of the politics, I know Dr. Weekly's reputation to be a servant of the people, and it's really great to be in company with him because his agenda is the people. It transcends politics. And I think that's missing in a lot of our leaders these days. The actual service of the people is what I aspire to be. So I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight and figuring out how we can restore trust in each other so that we can build the system that we deserve and the lives that we deserve.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, President. I appreciate you chiming in. You guys are just so friendly today. You guys just throwing compliments across the interwebs to each other, and I like that. That's what I would like to see from our political candidates, but it isn't the case. But Dr. Weekly, how long have you voted? How long have you been a voter and have actually utilized the vote?
I didn't really start voting until in the 80s. And I don't know if you and Quinn were even born. I don't know if you guys are young, but in the 80s, when I attended undergrad at Grambling State University, is when I became a registered voter. And so had to be right about 19, 20, 21 years of age is when I actually got registered, and I participated in the process there as an undergrad.
That's awesome. What about you, President?
I have voted in almost every election since 2004. I was born in 86, so my first election was 2004. It was in a presidential election. I was registered in Missouri. That was a very interesting year.
Full disclaimer, I'm a registered nonpartisan, so I'm not a part of any of the political parties or the dominant political parties. But I've been voting since, which is it's kind of funny. I probably voted the same time you voted, my first time. So, and that was after I came back from Iraq. So I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. I graduated high school on a Tuesday, and I was on the Yellow Footprints at MCRD to be a Marine that Friday night. That was in June of 2002. February of 2003, I was in Iraq. So that transition from being a child to being a grown up hit me fast. Then I came back from Iraq and became a dad. So from then, my vote has been extremely important because I was always told that my vote meant that I had access to the party. I had a say at the table and I could be a part of the change. I don't want to speak for all dads, but since I am sitting in this seat, I will ask this question because it feels like it isn't as much. Dr. Weekly, how how important is the vote and what should we be expecting when we use it?
I can only speak for myself, and I'll tell you that I grew into the voting process understanding that my voice means something. My advocacy means something. I've seen people lose races by one vote. I've seen things that have been passed and approved by one vote. What gets me today in the 21st century is those of us with voter apathy. And I can understand why when we look at all of the things that have gone on in this country, when we look at how disparaging and how we've struggled in many different areas, whether it be economically or educationally, you name it. We've struggled in a lot of areas, from healthcare to housing infrastructure. All of those things have played such a pivotal part in our lives. But for me, my vote is extremely important because what it does is it gives me an opportunity to use that voice to go and advocate on something that I believe in, to feel like I'm a part of the process, even though in some cases there have been instances where I didn't feel like my vote made a big difference because it was the same thing over and over again. And I hear that all the time. But then, I heard an old wise man once say to me that if you're not on the way, you're in the way. You hear me? If you're
I
not on the way,
understand that.
you're in the way. And
I understand.
so, we have some of the best coaches on the planet that's sitting on the couch every Sunday. They can tell you every play and what could have been done, what should have been done, what might have been done. But if you're not in the game, you're watching the game.
Right.
And so I decided one day, because I had made a conscious decision coming out of undergrad, I'd never go into politics.
Mm,
I'd never go into politics. All I wanted to do back in the 80s, going into the 90s, was get a job that would help me pay off my student loans.
mm,
Go figure. But that's not what God had planned for me. And lo and behold, I ended up in politics. And
mm.
Lord knows, I did what I thought I knew how to do. And to President, you can shut me up when you just raise a red flag and I'm done. But President Quentin, thank you so much for recognizing the fact of just being out there with the people. That's all I knew. I didn't come to the table with a bunch of business knowledge. I didn't know how to come in and assimilate different types of folks from the business industry to help create economic development and economic prosperity. I see those are not the circles that I grew up in. And so I came in from a grassroots standpoint, and all I knew was my grandmama told me when I first got in office, she said, "Baby, you make sure you take care of old people and you make sure that you take care of them babies. And whatever you do, you make sure that you respect yourself and you do your very best that you don't disrespect your community." And
That's
that's what I
excellent.
that's what I stood on. And so my vote, to me, in closing, my vote means everything to me because I know how valuable it is. I know what a difference that it makes and have made and will continue to make as long as God allows me to be on his good green God's earth.
That's
There you
awesome.
go.
Thanks for sharing that.
Mm.
Just to follow up, how do you like as you're planning out your voting strategy?
Yeah,
How do you go about making your decisions? How do you go about weeding through kind of the muck that's out there now and
sure.
get to an educated decision? Because
Yeah.
this conversation in its totality is about getting to an educated decision and not being swayed by whatever the media is doing or whatever
No,
the
no.
negativity is doing. So how do you go about navigating through, what seems to be a disheartening experience?
Well, I think for me, and I may have a small advantage having been in politics and knowing how it works behind the scenes. You
Mhm.
know, today I tell the average person, do your homework. That little gadget that you have in your hand, that's one of the most powerful tools you're walking around with. That's your cell phone.
Mm,
Google has been one of my best friends for a long time. I Google everything. And so when I want to know about a candidate or when I want to just know who they are, like for example, there are a lot of judges on the ballot that people don't know who they are. I don't know who a lot of them are. I've turned to a number of my subject matter experts who are either attorneys or judges currently on the bench or have been on the bench and know the system. I can call a court administrator and say, tell me about Gerald Mays.
right.
Is this somebody that I should support? And so I have the ability to get a little bit more insight, probably better than others. And I've been able to really establish a great amount of trust with a lot of my constituents who trust me.
Right.
And I don't go and drop off copies of a sample ballot. Today I sat on the phone with about 10 people going down their ballots, and I gave them explanations about each one of the candidates that I knew. I spoke about because last night, Mr. President will tell you we were really and thoroughly educated. He and Senator Dina Neal educated
Mhm.
us about each question. On my radio show, I had the assistant public defender and the CEO of the ACLU on my radio show to break it down to our listeners in terms of the pros and cons of all seven questions. And so, that's probably the small advantage that I have. I have access to people who can help me better understand, and that just all goes back to and help me with this, Quentin. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. Don't ever be ashamed and afraid to educate yourself.
Yeah, there's no
That's an excellent point. President, I'd like to hear your thoughts for, as far as the ones who don't necessarily have access to these political figures and would have to do,
Yeah.
their own research online. How would you go about that?
what I start with is what matters for me. It
Hmm.
really gets that simple. What matters to you? What matters to you? What matters to the people you love? And who's talking about that? Now, more often than not, what you're going to find is that there's probably no one specifically talking about your specific thing, right? The
Mhm.
daycare charges you that extra $10 every 1 minute you late. That we're not getting that specific. But if we are talking about rent costs going up with no end in sight, if we are talking about not having enough hospitals in community, there are candidates who are talking about that, right? Like we said on the phones, you can absolutely positively be doing your research. It matters to do the research. Being an informed voter is the difference between supporting your community and what the future of your family can look like and voting against your interests altogether. I like that we have vote by mail in Nevada because I feel like I can look at my ballot, I can research each name if I want to. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I do it while I'm watching TV. Like I'm sitting here, I'm on my laptop, I got something going in the background. It's a low pressure situation for me, and I'm
Mhm.
able to look for the things that matter. So you can go to their websites. There's other tools like Ballotpedia.org, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that when someone files for office, they can choose to complete a Ballotpedia questionnaire. That
Mhm.
is a questionnaire about a variety of things. So be diligent about where you research,
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
research that matters because there's a lot of stuff that just gets propped up. Anybody can start a $13 Wix website and make somebody sound terrible.
Yeah.
You know how to research. You know how to be a critical thinker. Do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, but just do like everybody else do. I can go through all my text messages and everything, and I got so many people who have sent me pictures of their ballots where they've circled different races or some of the questions, and just say, hey, what should I do on this one, or what do you think about that? And we talk it out. And so I want to just encourage everybody out there: don't be afraid, don't be ashamed. And for those of us, who better understand or are in the know, let's do a better job at sharing. And then let's not only just share with them about the candidates, let's talk to them about the benefits of why we're telling them, or, about each candidate that can align ourselves with how we can make our communities a little bit better, how we can improve things in our school system. What is it that we need to do in terms of healthcare access, and just a number of those things. Just ask questions. Don't feel like you're, oh my God, I don't want to appear to be dumb.
Right.
That should never be, and we should never make anybody feel that way.
Absolutely. It should be a safe space to be able to get the
Yes.
answers that you need, especially if they have a direct impact on your household, your family, your finances, and your future. All of those things are extremely important. And it's important that people understand that their vote isn't a vote for a person, is their vote is for a ideal that is supposed to be carried out in your community. It's not. I think I get caught up sometimes because I feel like they turn these races into like a morality conversation, like where we almost have to look at this as we're voting for or against good or evil. And we have to understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that our vote is a vote towards where we're going to spend money in our communities and in our country. Is that a correct assessment as far as what our vote truly means at its like barest understanding?
I think you're right. It is. I'd argue it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say your vote is a demonstration of the direction you want the country to go based on the policies that you've heard described. Even through all of the clutter of the political and campaign commercials, there are some very serious and hard realities through all the muddle, right? And in my nonpartisan capacity, I'm just going to repeat back the things that I've heard. I've heard both candidates for major parties say. I've heard one candidate say, hey, I think that we should be helping small businesses and families. When families come into the world, they need some help, right? Because America, we talk about being this greatest nation of all, but we actually have some real anti family policies. I hear one candidate talking about policies that would support families and would support small business. I hear another candidate say, hey, if you vote for me, you ain't gonna ever have to vote again because I'm gonna just fix everything. That's not democracy to me. And that is not being partisan. That's telling you what these two candidates have said. Now, when you get into the minutia of the policies and the back and forth and tariffs this and China that and whatever, then yes, that's hard to parse through. But this election, you have to decide what matters for you and
Right.
what matters for your family. And which of those two candidates, which I understand if you have issues with both candidates, I have issues with both candidates. But I also believe that it's better to rebuild, revamp the system we have than burning it all down and starting from scratch. Because that's how it feels. That's what the options feel like to me.
Right.
I 100% agree. And Gerald, I'll say, I think for many of us, especially in our community, sometimes we get very afraid when we start hearing words like policy and
Mhm.
democracy and things like that, because we don't really understand where are they going with that? What does that really mean, and how does that affect my everyday life? And once again, we as a community, we as an elected body, we just have to do a better job at how we go in our communities and explain these type of wordings, and um, what it means to be engaged. I think when I look at, and I'll just say this real briefly, Gerald. When I look at, like, say for example, our schools. On the first day of school at Matt Kelly Elementary School, you get about, I don't know, it had to be damn near 150 men out there, and then women start to join in as well, welcoming kids back to school
Mhm.
on the very first day of school. The second day of school, Nobody shows back up
None.
there. And you see a boatload of single mothers walking their children down that red carpet. What if, for example, at least 50 of those men showed back up at that school all week just to reinforce? See, these are things that when we look at democracy and when we look at access and when we look at aligning, ourselves to things that matter. President, he put it out there tonight that things that matter. These are
Right.
things that matter. I'm hearing now that even in some of our housing units, people have signs on their door saying, "Don't knock on my door. I've already voted." And what did they say last night, Quentin? And we look at the data sheet and see, no, you haven't. They just don't want to be bothered
Right.
because it's not that they don't care. It's just that they just don't understand what does this mean for me and how does this get me out of my current situation.
I mean, I agree. I mean, like that's essentially the reason why, I asked you guys to come on is because I don't know. I remember one of the very first when me and Quentin started hanging out, he invited me to a men's meeting, and it was during election season, the last election season. And I'm sitting in this large room with the senator from Nevada, Stephen Horsford, as well as Senator Cory Booker. And we were just having a conversation. And my question to them was, I don't know what my vote is for because I feel like you guys tell me the story of what we are trying to accomplish, but yet those things never materialize in my lifetime. So I don't actually know what I'm voting for. Am I voting for something that I can actually see today, or am I voting for something that's a part of this like master plan? And in that explanation, it feels manipulative a little bit. It feels like these people can come to you and say, just vote for me, and not to bust your chops, uh president, but I hear a candidate also say, vote for me and I'll explain what is going to happen in the future. Like, vote for me now and then it'll get fixed. And then we have another president that says, vote for me and you'll never have to worry about it again. So for me, like, these messages are all the same and it's hard to decipher. Like, even on that same tip, you have one candidate that says that they're calling their taxes tariffs and it'll save $4,000, and these people are calling their tariffs taxes and it'll save $3,800 for families a year. So like, it's so much, it seems so nuanced that it becomes above me, like beyond me for understanding. And I'm not speaking for all black men who don't have access, but I don't want to hand my vote over without getting something back, because I believe that the vote is how you hold people accountable.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, you shouldn't. Like, you're absolutely right. You shouldn't. And this is the part where I'm critical of the Democratic Party, because what I say is, we've not the Democrat. I'm not saying the Democratic Party has not done a good enough job of tangibly showing
Yes.
families, men, black people, brown people, how their policies have measurably improved their lives tangibly. How can you feel it, right? I know this because I watch the news all day, have since I was a sophomore in high school. Like, this is just what I do. So I can sit with you and I can run down the policies and I can talk to you about all the different bills and who signed it first and all of that. I can do all of that. But if you don't feel it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you don't feel it, it doesn't matter. Now, there's another side to this too. We have to understand the limitations of these offices. People expect Stephen Horsford to move the sun, the moon, and the stars. People are expecting Kamala Harris to stop racism and fix climate change and all of these things. It doesn't work like that. And it doesn't
No.
work like that, quite honestly, because we, as people who are participants in this system, have said we don't want it to work like that. We like the slow pace of change in this country because that's the bureaucracy that we have allowed to be okay. When the former president was convicted of felonies, my nephew, who is a felon, called me and said, "So you mean to tell me the dude can run for president, but he can't work at the post office. I said, that's absolutely right. And you know why that's right? Because you haven't got involved. You have said, this isn't for me. You have said, I don't understand this. We can't acquiesce to things that we don't understand and reside to being unfamiliar, because that unfamiliarity is costing our families their lives. So I hear what you're saying, Gerald, but we own some of this too. We can't
100%.
just throw our hands up.
Nope.
We can't just throw our hands up.
I agree. But
And we also cannot feel like I've given you my vote, and now I can go home and sit down.
Mm.
If anything, it's time for you to get up, get out, and do something.
right.
You got to be engaged. You know, when I was sworn in as a county commissioner, I had one of the largest swearing-in ceremonies that they've ever had. And after I immediately took my seat and people dispersed and people went home, I served on that board for 13 years. And I can tell you, there were commission meetings where I can count on one hand how many people that look like us show up and participate. And we would sit there and allocate millions of taxpayer dollars. And you had one or two or three or four, maybe max, people who would come up to the dais and they'd raise so much hell. And some of them would be Black folks. And guess who they would target that at?
You.
The only one Black person sitting
The
there.
person that they specifically voted for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then even if you didn't vote for them, they act as if there was this tone as if you could solve everybody's problem, when in essence, Mr. President, help me, you need 4 votes. They tell you all the time, you got to be able to count to 4, right? So it's a process. It's something that we have to continue to do, what, like, again, Senator Neal and some of the other legislators have done in the past. They've had seminars, they've had workshops, they've had informationals where we invite people out to the community to come out and learn how the process works. Hey, this is a bill. This is a bill draft. This is how it works. If you want to come to Carson City and testify on behalf of anything, hey, this is how you go about doing that. If you can't make it to Carson City, hey, the Grant Sawyer building is right down the street across from the old Cashman Field there. You know, so we'd say, like, I think last night, Quinn, I heard you say how city council and county commission meetings are scheduled at about 9 a.m. during the middle of the week when people have to work. We get that. But who comes down there and say anything? Well, this is how it is. You can affect change by getting involved. I remember way out in the far west, out there, they call it Summerlin today. I remember when they were building those new homes in those neighborhoods out there. Those people started to see cracks in their sidewalks. Oh my God, in their sidewalks. Do you know there were a couple thousand of them? There were so many people, they couldn't even get into the commission chambers to talk about cracks in their sidewalks. But guess what happened? I bet you any kind of money, Public Works stepped up and got every last one of them sidewalks fixed.
Right.
It went to the top of the list.
They went to the top of the list. And, you know, that's something that I had to do with my seniors over at the MLK Senior Center. You go over to the MLK Senior Center now, that was a cracker box. And no disrespect to the commissioner who had that whole plaza built, but they had outgrown that. And every time I would go there for an event or a neighborhood meeting, they were on my back about, look at this, we're sitting on top of each other. I said, well, what do y'all want me to do? Do something about it. I said, and what are you all gonna do? Well, what you want us to do? I said, just like y'all talking to me, I want y'all to get in your cars, carpool, do whatever you have to do. I want to see all y'all at the next county commission meeting, and I want y'all to stand up and tell these people the same thing y'all are telling me. Lo and behold, about 120 of them showed up. They raised so much hell. Look at their center today. It's the pride on the corner of Martin Luther King and Cary. And that's because the seniors stepped up and they used their voices and they advocated for what they needed. My seniors at the Walnut Recreation Center, they did the same thing. And if you go down to Walnut, you'll see their new center. It's all about us using our voices and we're banding together. It's not about the NAACP competing against National Action Network, or we don't support this, or the D9 fraternities and sororities ain't getting together because my name is not first on the flyer. All that stuff is old. You got people out here right now trying to elect a person who wants to take us backwards, who wants to erase everything that people who came way before us fought for, shoulders that we're standing on. And we're sitting here talking about, I don't think so. I ain't got time for that. I'll pass on this one. Well, I tell you what, it's a whole bunch of y'all behind is going to be passing when some of this mess that's going to come down the pike. Now, I love the fact that ex-offenders have a right to cast their votes.
Yeah, me too.
I'm loving that. It's so many new things. You got more men and women out there that are ex-offenders who are voting now more than folks who have their rights,
Yep.
have their full
And
rights. So
They
we
they, they
got
value
problems,
they they value that more, right? Once it's
and
been
they
taken away,
respect
they
and they
respect it and value
value
it.
it. They respect and they value it, because anytime you have a question on the ballot that's talking about slavery, hell, the line should be so long, it should be crazy. It should, they should keep the polls open 2 days, making sure that that mess don't go nowhere.
I also
That's it.
was going to plug that we have a new law in Nevada, whereas if you are if you know someone that's in Clark County Detention Center, they can actually vote.
They
Mm.
can
Detention
vote.
Center is a vote site. If you
Oh,
are just
really?
being held in the county
Yeah,
jail, yes, you can vote. You have not
they can
lost your
vote.
voting rights. They can vote. That's a bill that I believe Assemblywoman Brittany Miller sponsored.
Yep.
Mm.
See, and the other part about this stuff is policy gets so nuanced. It doesn't that particular bill won't impact everybody, but it does impact a lot of people and a lot of
Right.
people who look like us. So while that is like a very positive thing to support and strengthen our democracy, how do you tell that story so that everybody knows? Because everybody's lived experience isn't that they would know someone like that.
No.
But that doesn't make it any less good. It doesn't make it any less worth talking about and telling. But those are the types of wins that kind of get lost in the
Yeah.
public discourse of all the crazy, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because I was thinking about that on my way to the office a couple hours ago, and it's a lot of times what ends up happening is that we don't value other people's lived experiences, and then we discredit their lived experiences with our own lived experience, right? So we tell them that that isn't what happens because it didn't happen to me. Obviously, we already know that we do this because this ultimately is how it feels in this political environment. And I really appreciate what you two have just explained to me. It has definitely opened my eyes to a lot, because what I was thinking was that my vote was the currency of the politician, but really my vote is my ticket into the theme park. And the only way that I can make sure that my experience in the theme park is great is if I participate, is if I get into the lines and I interact with the people who are all here to have the same fun that I'm having. So I really, really appreciate that, as you said, the vote being nuanced conversation, because it creates such a different perspective when you believe that this is in tandem and not they need to give me something. It is, I want this and I'm giving you my vote because I trust that you're going to do it. And over the next 2 years, I'm going to be down in that office to ensure that you do it. And that's how we hold our politicians accountable. So I don't want to, I'm just going to recap a little bit before we kind of continue on. The key is to do your own, is to figure out what matters to you and your family first. There are a boatload of topics that your vote directly correlates to, things like economic stability, education quality, healthcare access, housing and infrastructure, safety and policing, retirement and social security, community, social services. All of those things are directly related to your vote, but that is just the very first step. Once you vote, then you're going to have to follow up for the next couple years to where that politician knows that if they don't get their thing together, then they're going to have to deal with you and the people who want this to happen. That's essentially what I deduced from Dr. Weekly's fine example of the seniors over at the Martin Luther King Center, right? Is that if
Listen,
I
listen.
voted for you,
We
that's great. Even if I didn't vote for you,
yes,
because you hold
yes.
this position, I expect something from this position, and I'm going to come up here and hold you accountable to that.
Absolutely. And we have to get that ingrained in our heads. I know sometimes it can be time consuming, but we have to team up in our neighborhoods. Again, I hear Quentin talk about the NAACP, and people think that when you talk about NAACP, that it's about marching and rallying and fighting. Everything is not a fight.
Right.
Sometimes there are many celebrations that happen through the NAACP.
Right.
There are a lot of victories that happen behind the scenes. There are a lot of wins that NAACP have been engaged in that they've never even put a press release out to celebrate that. And so I think that we as a community, I pray. I'm really, really nervous in this election here because what's happening is you got a lot of people out here that know things that are being said on TV commercials and things that are being said, just blatant on TV and that's written. It ain't right. And why does this man get an opportunity to say what a whole bunch of these folks feel and believe anyway? You know, we're sitting here, we probably sit right next to some folks who they ain't gonna say nothing on the job, but they're not going to say anything to you in the other organizations and boards we sit on, but they're quietly sitting in the confinements of their home saying, I love everything that's being said.
Mhm.
That mess that took place the other day at that man's rally, he called it a love fest. He called that mess, Quentin, a love fest.
Yeah, he
How
called the insurrection a love fest. Now
the insurrection of a love fest.
this is the same. Like Gerald's a veteran, right? Like
Mm,
there were folks that day who lost their lives, and we mischaracterized the reality of what happened. So we
yeah.
have to like do your research so that you don't get hoodwinked by the
Yes.
reclassification, the redefining of
Yes.
words. Like we are living through a very interesting moment where people are
Yeah.
trying to change the meaning of words.
Right.
And it's up to us. I love how Gerald just illustrated like the post voting activities. Voting doesn't just stop there. The people we elect on Tuesday have power because the people said it.
Mhm.
And it goes beyond election day because you have to continue to go and hold folks accountable. You should be a part of the conversation when they're talking about what it means to implement a bill. When the
Yeah.
ballot questions, whichever ones pass, you need to be part of the conversation that talks about, okay, so how are we going to actually do this, right? That is work for you to do. Now, it's free work. I'm here to tell you it's definitely free work. But is it worth being engaged so that you know what the future of your community is going to look like? I think so. I happen to think
Absolutely.
so. It matters to
That's the
me.
payment.
That's the payment.
The payment is that you get to enact change in your community by utilizing your voice. And if there's one thing that I could encourage all the dads out there, the men out there that's listening to this, is that don't be discouraged by all of the craziness. Your vote matters. It always has. Even if you think that it doesn't, it matters. Even if you don't vote, your voice matters. So make it known. Go out there, meet these politicians. I had an opportunity a few years ago to do exactly that. I sat up at the Capitol on Capitol Hill during the last session. I actually got to sit up there with a Marine Corps friend of mine, Assemblyman Ruben De Silva, who he and I served in the Marine Corps together. He went to Iraq like a year and a half after me, but I won't hold it against him. So I got a chance to sit up there with him, and he was kind of talking me through some of these things, like the processes of all of these things. And what he shared with me was like, there aren't enough, there aren't really enough voices in these rooms for us to truly make decisions. Like a majority of what's happening in our state of Nevada, and I'm pretty sure this is what's going on across the country, is that we vote someone in and then we say, all right, you should know why I voted you in. Now go do the thing. Right. And then we sit on our couches and we wait for the stuff to come down the pipeline. And then we get upset or we complain because they didn't do whatever we said, not knowing that our vote didn't say anything. we have to come to the table with the words behind the vote. So if that's kind of how this process is, and you're talking about getting people more activated throughout the entire process, not just every 4 years, not just every 2 years, but throughout the entire process, I can tell you that it is a daunting task and is extremely hard, but it's definitely worth it. How, if you guys can entertain me for a few minutes and let us know what are the actual expectations for each position? Obviously, if Dr. Weekly is the commissioner, he can't lower my taxes, right? So I can't come to his chambers and yell and scream at him because my taxes are too high and I want
Well,
him to
maybe
do
you
something
can.
about
The
it.
county has control over your property tax. And there's a
Okay.
Absolutely.
county assessor. There's
Okay.
a county
Absolutely.
assessor, and the county can assess. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So if you guys can kind of like share what these roles actually do and what are the expectations for them. You don't have to go through all of them, but maybe the commissioner, the senators, assemblymen. Do we have ombudsmen in Nevada?
We
No, we
do. The
don't.
count.
Oh, we do? I
Well,
didn't know that.
the county had one for years. Um, and I don't know if I know while I was a commissioner, we had one. We had an ombudsman. And Tisha, as a matter of fact, African American young lady.
Hmm.
But I think, to me, I think her hands were so tied, Mr. President. I think she was so limited in terms of what she could and could not do. But the county has the ability to to have a full-time person on staff to yeah be that in that position. Yes, sir.
And what exactly does an ombudsman do? Like what are their responsibilities, I should say?
Well, actually, their job is to really be a liaison between their office and the manager's office, the county manager's office. And the county manager is the person that really runs the county, the 3,500 employees that call Clark County their employer. They oversee a budget. The county manager oversees a budget of about, what is it, Quinn, about 3 to 5 billion a year annually
With a B. With a B.
with a B. But the ombudsman has an opportunity to people can go in and share concerns. Have this person go in and help mitigate issues that they're having. Feel complaints. They're almost to me like a shield for the manager's office to a certain extent. Um, they have that access to the various directors, departments, to be able to facilitate. How do we bring resolve to the issues that you're having? But they don't have that. The only thing I think that she was missing, Quentin, was just that big ability to hold folks really accountable and make big decisions that had anything to do monetarily.
Yeah.
And there were many times when those issues had to come before the commission or the manager who had to make the final decision. But her recommendations went very, very far, Gerald.
No, that's awesome. So when we're talking about the Congress, what are the expectations of our senators and congressmen?
So I think it's important to note
Mhm.
that you have federal elected officials and you have state elected officials.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So your federal Congress people are responsible for federal related programming. So Congressman Horsford, for example, he helps set a national budget. Okay. Because the Congress is in charge of the money of the country of the United States. There's some disinformation going around about how the former president provided stimulus checks for everybody. That's not a function of the office of president. That's a function of the United States House of Representatives. So they set a national budget. Okay. That's how that works. So these are federal programs like Head Start that you might be accustomed to. My grandmother has Medicare because she's 93, right? Those are federal programs to take care of our seniors. You might be familiar with SNAP or WIC. Those are federal programs. Congressman Horsford has some leverage, authority, jurisdiction over those types of programs. Okay.
Mhm.
At the state level, you have a assembly person which is equivalent to Congress, and you have a state senator, which is equivalent to the federal U.S. senator. But those offices are they meet in Carson City, and it's about state policy, not federal policy.
Yeah.
So
Which is a
these
tier,
folks,
which is a tier under federal. Mm-hmm.
yep, a tier under federal, and they're managing programs, setting the budget for the state services, right? How much money our schools get, what types of laws we need to make or change to support voting rights and voting access, things of that nature. They're legislators. They're help making the rules.
And Quentin, tell them the difference between Congress, Horsford's office, and Jackie Rosen's office.
Yep. So in effect, it's the same job. It's just two different bodies. What makes it different? When you're in the U.S. House of Representatives, you represent about 400,000 people based on your district. Congressman Horsford represents a specific district in Nevada, whereas Jackie Rosen, as a U.S. Senator, she represents the whole state of Nevada. And she represents the whole state for a different period of time, 6 years. In effect, it's the same job. They're approving the same budgets. They sit on committees that have authority over federal programs. It's really the same job. Senate does make a little bit more, and you can breathe a little bit more in the Senate because your term is 6 years. Whereas Congressman Horsford, that brother stays. He got to stay fundraising. He got to stay making phone calls. It's harder to be in Congress.
That's why don't nobody want that job. It's too much. But to be perfectly honest with you, Gerald, if you just watch some of the commercials today that's out there, you can see some of the work when she talks about some of the healthcare things that she's battled on, women reproductive rights. When you hear them talk about housing and how they were able to fight against, landlord gouging or what have you. You see Congressman Horsford in a commercial with Mario's, being able to find federal funds to help go into economically depressed areas to be able to provide goods and services, to those residents there. Those are things that they do in Congress, and what they fight for are the number of seats. If they can control their House, they're able to push their agenda forward. If that makes sense. And yeah, and I want people, I wish that there was something out there, Quentin, that would really, if there's a way that these big boys and girls who are out there serving as surrogates for Vice President Harris, I wish that they would get a message out to across the nation. Somebody should spend some money purchasing a commercial to dispel that myth that this man gave these stimulus checks. Those stimulus checks had nothing to do with him. By the time he came in, he got to sign them, but they weren't his. He didn't allocate that money. He didn't even push for that. So that has to be cleared up, Quentin, some kind of way. I don't know if that needs to come from NAACP.
I think she already cleared it up. She cleared it on Club Shay Shay. I think she said that on Shannon Sharp's podcast.
Yeah, but she needs to do a commercial. She needs to do a commercial on it. You know what I mean? Because everybody don't listen to Club Shay Shay. Charlamagne get on a lot of people's nerves. Hello.
Shannon Sharp.
not Charlamagne. I mean, what the man name?
Shannon Sharp.
Shannon Sharp.
Yeah, Shannon Sharp. Yeah, Shannon Sharp too busy leaking all of his tapes. So we need a real national commercial that's out there.
Not the subtle shops at Unc.
we need Unc to fall back. Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. So in regards to, we cleared up, because I like to keep going back, because if people are going to follow us on this journey, I want them to be fully understanding what's going on. So we cleared up that you need to know what is important for you and your household before you get to researching, so that you're clear on yourself first. Second, then research to you what is important to you, and find out who's speaking to your issues, and then do your deep dive into those candidates to see if that picture is complete. Am I on track?
Yes.
That sounds good.
Outside of that, once you've come to a decision on who you're going to vote for, then you have to understand that that's just the first step. It doesn't entitle you to change. It doesn't give you change immediately. It just invites you to the party and lets the people know that you're going to be a part of it. The next step of that is that you actually have to show up on all of those things that you have determined are important to you and your family. You have to then show up for those issues when your local government is discussing those issues so that you can have a voice. It would even be better if you had a community of people who agreed or who believed the things that you believed or had the same values that you had, and then all of you go up there, show up to fight for the things that you need and want in your households and communities, ensuring that you are bringing the right problems to the right person and not just sharing crazy misunderstanding and misinformation to everyone.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
on
you're
point for
on.
that?
And now that, when we went through COVID, a lot of things shut down. But pre-COVID, neighborhood meetings here in our community, they don't do it like this all over the country. But you can, I ain't gonna say demand, I don't like to use that word, but you can request your representative to hold a town hall meeting, hold a neighborhood meeting, come and talk to us in terms of what's going on with certain developments that may be coming into your neighborhood. Prior to them voting for how they're going to allocate CDBG funding.
And
That's
what's
very important.
CBDG? CBDG.
Community Development Block Grant Funds, which helps a lot of our nonprofit organizations that provide tutoring services, that may work with a lot of our kids that are looking to be involved in after school programs, like, for example, Gentlemen by Choice. You have
Yes,
Casino
sir.
Boom, who has a mentorship program out there. You have the Divine Nine, who have mentorship programs out there. CDBG funds help with things like that.
Mm.
They also are allocated for housing development projects. They also have a piece of it that goes toward startup businesses. And so there are a number of things. And then, Quentin, another thing that you know is good, that if you can show up in person, that's even great, because taking your 3 minutes at the dais means the world. But nowadays, with technology, shoot an email.
Hmm.
Shoot an email to that elected official. All of them have chief of staffs.
Mm-hmm.
And best believe me, they read them. Call
Mm.
their offices. Call their offices. If you're calling the county, 455-3500. If you're calling the city, what is it? 229-6405. And
Yes,
that's
you
the
got
main
it.
and that's the main switchboard. And you ask to speak to that representative. You can even, during the legislative session, you can go online and call up to Carson City and speak to the what is it, Quinn, the LCB?
Legislative Council Bureau. Yeah, LCB.
The LCB, and get a
Mm.
message sent to your representative's office. And so some of the most active constituents that I had were seniors.
Mm.
And these people didn't have the ability to get in a car and drive down to Grand Central Parkway or over on Main Street. They called. And it's nothing like walking in your office, Gerald, and there's a stack of messages like this. Back in the days, the secretary would give you a handwritten, see somebody, there it is, Quentin, our president, on it.
Hmm.
And the secretary will hand you a stack of handwritten phone. You got a call from Gerald Mays, councilman. You got a call from. Now everything is an email. It's nothing like logging into your email and you got 75 messages in there from constituents who
Mm.
are talking to you about some concerns that they're having.
Mm.
And what you do, the first thing you do, I can tell you what William McCurdy do, is he takes all of those, Anthony Manor in his office, or whoever his other liaison is, they print them all out. They make a folder. Somebody combs through them, and then they decide, hey, we need to meet with this group here, because I'd rather come out to your neighborhood and meet with you about this issue than all 75 of you show up at my meeting and
Hmm.
sit there and rake me over the coals.
Right.
That's how you move them mountains. Now I'm putting you up on game on how to
I
get it
see. Yeah,
done.
I'm taking. I got notes.
I
Because
want to add.
that's all I really want out of this is either is get the understanding that I need to know for my vote.
Well, look, in the words of Pastor Kelsey West, watch this. Watch this. Go ahead, Quentin. Add to it. Watch this.
Well, all I was going to say is that because the council and county commission meetings are during the day, and if you can't make it personally, what you can do, in addition to calling their office, you can find a political organizing home. You can find a community home that is working to build power around the issue that matters to you. If you care about the justice system, you don't like that folks get treated badly in CCDC, then there's organizations that do that work. You care about the environment, there's organizations right here who do that work. And they go to the city council meeting, they go to the county council meeting, right? And in going to those meetings, they're representing the interests that you say you care about. So if you can't make it, find you an organizing home where those folks are showing up to be in community to make sure that the interests of folks like you and your family and your community are represented.
I think that's an excellent place to pause at and wrap things up because I just want to thank you too for coming on and tickling my fancy a little bit about something that I am not very educated on, but as I'm getting older, starting to understand how impactful it is and how I want to do right by it, I guess. I want to make my vote matter to me and not just something that I'm just doing for the sake of doing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I voted for Obama because he was black and I'm black. I don't want to make those votes though. Like, that's not necessarily my goal. My goal is to make a vote because it has a direct influence on my life, my family, and the people I love and care for in my community. So thank you too for coming on. I want to thank everybody else who came on and had this conversation with us. I know we had a couple comments and some statements that wanted to be made, so I'm going to allow Mr. Antonis Pullum to give his pittance.
My peoples. Hey, Dr. Weekly, President. Think about this. I'm like George Wallace. I be thinking. You know how every football season we get together and we do a fantasy football league.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we know the stats of all the players and who we want to pick on our team to build up our team to win at the end of the season. How about doing election season, maybe every year, horses in there for two. We get together and make sure we know their stats, what they voted for, what they didn't vote for, how it's really affecting the community. And we build our team up, and then we can hold them accountable as a community. Like, we build our own fantasy, whatever we want to call it, league, and then we really go through the stats. Because folks go hard and they pay for this fantasy football league. So why don't we do something like that where we galvanize around the politics, because it's really affecting us. And I think if we did something like that, we have Dr. Weekly, who knows a plethora of things, and the president. President, I appreciate what you're doing. Like I'm saying, I'm giving you your flowers. The NAACP, I never was a member. I'll be honest. Now I need to re-up, but I appreciate the things that you're doing. But just something like that, we know football season coming around every year, because I feel like I'm getting pimped up too every 2 years.
Right.
Like, I'm getting so many emails and texts now.
Messages.
Where's that energy? And I know they don't have the funds, but where's that energy off season? Like, hit me up off season. Make me feel appreciated. If they ask me for another $1, I've already voted. Shouldn't there be something when you vote, they stop emailing and texting me?
You are supposed to fall off the voter roll.
I voted.
You're supposed to fall off the list.
It seemed like I've been amped up. Mom and I voted, last Sunday. And I'm getting.
And can I tell you, Mr. Pullen, what the problem is with that?
Yes.
Is that because of the big push for mail ballots and us to be able to vote that way, the system is behind.
Okay.
Would that be a little accurate, Quentin, that the system is behind? A lot of these mail ballots haven't even been counted yet.
I think there's some truth to that. I don't think that you can start counting in Nevada
Well,
before
not so
election
much
day.
counting, but check you
Oh,
off. I mean, going through, because from my understanding, how many hundreds of thousands have come through already to
yeah,
this one elections department?
yeah, that's true.
Okay. Well,
Well, if you use ballot tracks, it will tell you when your ballot is processed,
Yeah.
and then that should give you a flag to
Damn.
say, "Oh, okay, my ballot's been processed." And then if you still get a bunch of local messages, then there's something wrong there because you should fall off the local universes.
yeah,
When
because
I
we
say that, I'm just talking about the records we use to compile folks to say who's voted, who's not voted.
yeah, because we went into the machine and voted. So,
Right.
but again, I
Oh,
just
yeah.
think,
Yeah.
but I just think something like that we get because we know, like I say, I know cats who put in 100. They'll pay to get into the football league.
Hey, I'm in one. Don't judge those guys. I'm in one like that.
But,
All right.
but see what I'm saying? So, hey, but don't you know your player stats though?
100% do. I got alerts on my phone.
See what I'm saying? So if we had something like that where we could come in and get together, come together collectively, hey, get a draft board up there, look at hey, what Congressman Horse, whoever, what such and such doing, and then tally that, and then hey, let's galvanize and hold them accountable.
I think we can. I think that's something that is definitely quasi feasible. I'd have to see how much data that is to import. I probably can build out something that will pull that information and organize it for us. Uh, I if we were to do something like that, I would not. I would want to do that like in between election season, like
Absolutely,
before, right? Like before this ramps up into
absolutely.
the fiasco that it seems to be all the time. That way people can be clear before they get bombarded with the stuff, right? With
And,
all
and
the marketing.
and then we would know what was fluff and what was not because we have the data. So they
Facts.
couldn't tell us. So we could like, no, that's not what. Nope, that's not what they did. This is not what they're saying. Oh yeah, this is what they did. Okay, they're holding true to their word.
I'm with that. Maybe the possible new executive director at the NAACP can put that together. We'll see though. I'll have to talk to him when he get in there.
when they get there.
But yeah, I appreciate your comment, Mr. Pullum. And I appreciate you, Dr. Weekly, and Quentin for coming on and making this a success for me. I truly, truly appreciate you taking the time out to entertain the questions that swim around in that pool I call a brain. But this was extremely helpful information. I think I'm a lot clearer on what to expect and what I actually need to do to truly make my vote count, because it ultimately ends with me making sure my vote counts, not me voting in silence and then hoping that these people just know what I want in life, right? So I appreciate that. Thank you guys.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you for having us. Thank you for putting
All
this
right.
together.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much. This was great. Thank you to all your viewers who were on. I wish that we could have answered some of your questions, but y'all, let's not do this one time. Let's get back together. And yeah, I think this is
Yep.
really good. And please, everybody, go out and find just, I ain't going to say one person, everybody you can to vote is so important. So important. Thank you.